Hello, dear traveler, and welcome to my channel. I'm so glad you've joined me. Under tonight's gentle drizzle. Here, we pair soft, continual rain sounds, with whispered tales, to help you unwind, relax your mind, and drift off to sleep. Tonight's story is called The Torn Photograph's Edge. Ready to breathe in the calm? Let us begin. Part 1. A Faded Frame. I open the little wooden shoebox that's been sitting in the closet for years, and the scent of old paper drifts up to meet me. Inside, nestled between yellowing letters and birthday cards from decades ago, lies a single photograph, its corners curling and its surface creased in gentle waves. I pick it up, tracing the image with a fingertip, and realize it's only half of a portrait, my half, torn cleanly from the right edge, the other half lost to time. The world tilts slightly as a memory finds me, the day I took this picture, standing beside him on a sunlit quad. Golden leaves at our feet and laughter echoing off the old stone buildings. I press the torn edge against my lips, as though hoping to taste the warmth he left behind. I settle onto the edge of my bed, the shoebox balanced precariously on my lap, and I let myself drift back to that afternoon. I was 22 then, full of dreams about literature and life beyond our small New England town. He was studying architecture, always sketching columns and facades in his notebook, his hands stained with graphite. We met in that old library on campus, reaching for the same worn copy of Wuthering Heights. Our fingers brushed, and he looked up at me with those warm brown eyes that seemed to hold entire cathedrals of feeling. "You can have it," he said, voice low and tender, and from that moment, our stories intertwined. I gazed down at the photo again, noting the sepia tones that time has deepened into a mellow caramel. In this half, he's leaning toward me, arm draped casually around my shoulders, and I'm laughing at something he whispered, something I can no longer recall. The backdrop is the campus elm, its branches arcing overhead like a cathedral roof. In that moment, the world felt infinite and ours for the taking. But life, as I've learned, doesn't unfold in perfect symmetry. After graduation, he received a fellowship to study in Europe. We said we'd make it work, calls at odd hours, letters filled with longing, but the universe had other plans. My first job in the city kept me tethered to long shifts at the library archives, and he was swept into a whirlwind of travel and new friends abroad. Somewhere between Bordeaux and Barcelona, between manuscripts and moonlight, our connection frayed. One autumn morning, I opened the door to a plain envelope bearing his handwriting and found only a single line: "I need more time, be patient." I folded the note and placed it gently in the shoebox, where it still rests. I close my eyes now, imagining that letter fluttering from my hand as he embarked on that train journey through the Alps. I recall the hush of dawn at the station, the sky pale as a teacup, and the air crisp with promise. I remember pressing my half of the photograph to my heart before he boarded, swearing I could feel his pulse through the glossy paper. Opening my eyes, I tucked the photo under my pillow, wanting to keep his warmth close as I drift into sleep tonight. But sleep eludes me, so I decide to pull out the letters, drafts I wrote but never sent, pages stained with tears and midnight ink. One by one, I unfold them, each carrying the scent of our autumn mornings and summer evenings beneath the elm. There's a draft here where I begged him to come home, promising to wait under that same tree until he returned. On another sheet, I sketched our faces side by side, bridging the tear with a drawn arch, as though art could repair what reality could not. As I sift through these fragments of us, I realize how each piece of paper holds a heartbeat. And now, this photograph, torn but still resonant, feels like the core of it all. It's a reminder that love leaves traces even when it isn't everlasting. Outside my window, the city lights flicker through the blinds, offering a soft glow that feels almost like a promise of tomorrow. I cradle the photo in both hands and close my eyes again, surrendering to the hush of night. My breath slows, matching the rhythm of distant traffic and the gentle hum of the radiator. I whisper to the shadows, "Good night, my dear friend," though I cannot be sure if the wind carries my words to him across the ocean or merely scatters them into the dark. Still, holding that faded frame against my chest, I feel the echo of his warmth, and for a moment, that is enough to guide me into a quiet, drifting calm. Part 2. Half of a Whole. I remember the first time we sat beneath that great oak tree on campus green. Its ancient branches draping shadows like cathedral vaults over our heads. I was clutching my thermos of chamomile tea, trying to steady my nerves before our literature seminar. He ambled over with that sketchbook tucked under his arm, graphite smudges on his fingertips. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, voice low and warm, as if the world around us had hushed to let him speak. I nodded, heart fluttering like a moth against glass. He settled beside me, and we sat in companionable silence for a moment, watching the breeze set leaves dancing above. It was then I realized how complete I felt with him simply present. Our friendship blossomed in those sun-dappled afternoons. He traced lines of poetry in the dirt with a twig, whispering Emily Dickinson's verses, "Hope is the thing with feathers," his voice catching on the last word, eyes fixed on mine. I laughed softly, breath catching, and recited the next line without thinking, "that perches in the soul." In that exchange, we wove ourselves into the fabric of each other's hearts. He taught me to see art in everything, the way sunlight pooled on our notebooks, the gentle curve of campus fountains, the symmetry of Gothic arches framing the library doors. In return, I showed him how words could be sculpted into emotions, how a single sentence could carry more weight than 1,000 sketches. Our days followed a pleasant rhythm. Mornings brought shared coffees at the cafe near Admin Building A. He'd embellish his latte foam into little hearts or quill pens. Then sketch me as I sipped, oblivious to his artistry. Afternoons were for lectures, me absorbed in Victorian novels, him tracing column capitals in the margins of his notebook, both of us stealing glances when we thought the other wasn't looking. Evenings were magic. We wandered to the campus lake, where fireflies winked among cattails. He'd strum a borrowed guitar, and I'd hum harmonies, our voices blending until stars overhead seemed to sway in time with our melody. Once, we whispered confessions, his soft promise that he'd never let me go, my vow to stand by him through every gale life could muster. Every moment felt complete, like two puzzle pieces clicking into place. I would lean into him, and he'd rest his head against mine, the world around us dissolving until only the rhythm of our breathing remained. In those breaths, I felt truly seen, loved not for my grades or ambition, but for the shape of my smile and the way I tucked stray hair behind my ear. One crisp October evening, I remember him slipping his arm around my shoulders as the campus lights blinked on across the quad. The air smelled of bonfire smoke and fallen leaves, and he murmured, "I wish this night would never end." I closed my eyes then, leaning into the softness of his coat, and thought, if love is a moment, let it be this one. He was my anchor and my flight, both grounding me with his steadiness, inspiring me with his daring sketches of rooftops and catwalks in distant cities. Yet even in our happiest hours, there was a flicker of something unspoken, an awareness that life beyond college awaited us both, with demands neither of us could yet imagine. As I pull the half-torn photograph from beneath my pillow tonight, I can almost feel the rush of that first fall breeze as we rake leaves in the quad. I remember the way he caught my hand when I stumbled over a hidden root, his fingers warm and steady. I remember pressing my cheek to his shoulder and closing my eyes against the burn of tears I refused to shed in front of him. Back then, I believed our shared laughter and whispered dreams would conquer every distance. We planned road trips, summer internships, and evenings spent writing letters by candlelight. In those plans, we sewed the edges of our separate lives together, creating the tapestry we thought would be unbreakable. But now, years later, I trace the edge where the photo was torn, fingers gentle against the jagged paper. I can almost hear his laughter echoing across the seasons, bright as sunlight on water. And while that half smile captured in the snapshot still warms me, I know it also holds the ache of all the unwritten pages between us. Tonight, I tuck the photograph back beside the letters, drafts full of words I never had the courage to send. I close my eyes and let my mind wander back to that oak tree, to the hush of twilight and the thrill of new love. There, in the quiet space between memory and longing, I drift, carried by the echo of his gentle smile. Part 3. The morning he left. I wake before dawn, stirred by a hush that feels heavier than usual. Light seeps in around the curtains in soft slivers, and I can hear the faint chorus of early birds claiming the sky. My heart is tight in my chest as I lie perfectly still, listening for any sound of him stirring beside me, any sign that today isn't leaving me behind. He's moving quietly around our small apartment, packing the last of his things into a battered duffel bag. Each soft thump against the hardwood floor makes my pulse skip. I slip out of bed on bare feet, the carpet cool beneath my toes, and follow the faint rustle of canvas and cotton. In the living room, the lamp casts a warm pool of light over his open suitcase. He's folded his favorite navy sweater, the one I stole a few times on chilly nights, and tucked it neatly beside his worn leather journal. His architectural plans, rolled like pillars of hope, are stacked upright in the corner, ready for his lecture tour in Italy. He doesn't look up when I step in. Instead, he traces the line of a crease in his sketchbook. I study his profile, the slope of his nose, the gentle arch of his brow, the way his hair falls just so over his temple. A surge of longing catches in my throat, and before I can stop myself, I reach for the photograph that slipped from under my pillow. He glances at me then, blue-green eyes soft with sleep and something else, regret, perhaps, or unspoken apology. I hold the photo out with a trembling hand, and he takes it, fingertips brushing mine in a spark of warmth. I swallow the lump in my throat and try to smile, but the corners of my mouth quiver. "It's only half," I whisper, voice husky with unshed tears. "Keep it close." He presses his lips to the torn edge as though kissing me through the paper. Then tucks it inside his wallet, beside a faded ticket stub from our first concert together. I imagine him pulling it out on lonely nights in Rome, pressing the paper to his chest and thinking of me. He zips up the duffel bag and stands, lifting it with a practiced motion that makes my heart ache. I reach for his hand, and he lets me hold it, fingers interlaced, thumb stroking the back of my palm in gentle circles. "Promise me you'll write," I whisper, voice cracking. He nods, gaze downcast. "Every week," he says, squeezing my hand. "I'll write until you tell me not to." I nod, tears spilling over, and he wraps me in a hug that smells of his shampoo and coffee, a scent that's become as familiar as the weight of my own skin. I close my eyes, memorizing the curve of his back, the rise and fall of his shoulders. When we pull apart, I retreat to the kitchen to make tea, something comforting and warm to calm my churning thoughts. I fill the kettle and watch steam curl upward, twisting like the tendrils of hope I'm afraid to let bloom. Each second ticks by, measured in heartbeats and unspoken fears. I carry 2 mugs into the hallway, setting one on the floor beside my shoes. He lifts the other to his lips and sips slowly, eyes shutting against the ache of goodbye. The mug is cracked at the rim just like us, but still holds warmth, just like our memories. Downstairs, the taxi waits under the old sycamore tree, its engine idling in a low rumble that echoes the tremor in my chest. He shoulders his bag and steps toward the cab, pausing at the foot of the stairs. I want to say so many things: stay, don't go, I love you, but the words stick in my throat like stones. He crouches down and opens the door for me. The soft glow of the dashboard lights traces his features in twilight. He rests his hand on the door frame, fingers brushing my cheek in a final, lingering caress. "You'll be okay," he murmurs, eyes searching mine. I force a nod, though I've never felt more certain I won TV. Inside the taxi, I raise the window just enough to slip his photograph onto the seat beside him. He tucks his hand out and catches mine in the narrow space, holding it tight for a heartbeat before letting go. The cab pulls away, and the world tilts. I watch him recede in the window's frame until his profile is swallowed by the early morning haze. The photograph trembles on the seat, his half pressed against the vinyl as if yearning for mine. When he's gone, the world feels muted, colors washed out, sounds dulled by distance. I stand on the sidewalk, clutching my mug of cold tea, the steam gone, leaving only memories in its place. I walk back up the stairs alone, each step heavier than the last. In the apartment, the suitcase stands open, waiting to be emptied, as though our life together were paused in mid-breath. I set my mug down and run a hand along its chipped edge, tasting disappointment on my tongue. I crossed to the bookshelf where I'd placed our things, the sketchbook, my worn copy of Jane Eyre, the stack of letters I'd written but never sent. My fingers brush the spines as if seeking comfort in their familiarity. But the silence in the room presses in on me, and I realize I need his warmth back. I unzip the duffel bag to retrieve the photograph, slipping my hand inside the chalky scent of his belongings. My palm closes around the folded image, and I press it to my lips, tasting ink and paper. I fold my knees to my chest on the floor and close my eyes, rocking gently as though I might rock him back to me. Outside, the taxi's engine hum fades until it's just another distant memory. I let the tears fall, one by one, each carrying a fragment of hope that distance won't sever what we've built, hope that our edges, torn though they are, will one day be mended. In the hush of that empty space, I whisper to the photograph, "Stay with me, my half of a whole," knowing that tonight, and many nights to come, I will hold you close until sleep blurs the ache into dreams. Part 4. New Beginnings. I wake to the soft hum of my new neighborhood. The distant bark of a dog mingling with the gentle rustle of leaves in early summer breeze. The sky outside my bedroom window is painted in pastel shades, peach and lavender melting into pale blue, promising a fresh start. I draw the curtains aside and watch as a mail carrier walks down the sidewalk, her steps measured and deliberate. Just a week ago, I'd been living in a cramped city apartment, walls closing in around me like pages in a book I'd long since read. But the move to this quiet suburb felt like turning to a blank page, each sunrise offering new words to write on its margins. I slip out of bed and pad across the wooden floor, cool beneath my feet, to retrieve the torn photograph from the nightstand. The edges are softer now, worn from nightly touch, and I press it against my heart before setting it gently on the windowsill to catch the morning light. My new home is modest, 2 stories with pale siding and dark shutters that frame each window like a portrait. I've filled it sparingly, unpacking only a few boxes so far, my favorite mugs, the lavender-scented candle he gifted me on my birthday, the stack of journals brimming with half-finished stories. There's a spacious kitchen where the early sun slants through skylights, and I imagine myself one day hosting friends for brunch, eggs Benedict and laughter spilling into afternoon. Yet for now, the quiet is comforting, a soft blanket that wraps me in safety. I crossed the hall to my tiny office, once a guest bedroom where my new job awaits. I was offered a position at the local public library as assistant archivist, and I accepted on impulse, craving stability after months of uncertainty. The thought of dusty manuscripts and fading photographs made my heart flutter with gentle excitement. It reminded me that memories like my half-snapshot need caretakers to preserve their fragile beauty. I brew a cup of chamomile tea in the kitchen, its steam curling upward like lazy whispers. I carry the mug back into the office, where a small desk sits beneath a window overlooking the street. I've arranged my workspace with care, a brass lamp with a green glass shade, a neat row of reference books, and a framed print of that oak tree from campus, our oak, so I never forget where I began. I sit and cradle the mug between my hands, heart beating to the rhythm of this untraveled morning. My first day at the library feels like stepping into another world. The building is an old brick structure with arched windows and a grand staircase that creaks underfoot. Inside, the air smells of parchment and coffee, punctuated by the quiet murmur of patrons paging through books. I greet colleagues' warm smiles and friendly waves, and in each face I search for a hint of home, a sign that I belong here. My supervisor, Miss Callahan, guides me through the archives room. Rows of spines line wooden shelves, each label a doorway to another era. She shows me how to handle delicate photographs with cotton gloves, how to catalog letters by date and sender, how to unearth stories buried beneath layers of dust. I feel an uncanny kinship with these forgotten fragments. My own story, after all, is half hidden in a torn photograph. At lunch, I wander outside onto the small courtyard. A fountain burbles at its center, and the benches are shaded by magnolia trees in full bloom. I pull out my lunch, a sandwich wrapped in parchment, and settle onto a bench, closing my eyes as the petals drift like snow around me. For the first time in months, my breath lengthens, and I let the calmness settle into my bones. As days pass, routine weaves itself into the edges of my life. I arrive at the library each morning just before its doors open, unlocking them with a sense of purpose. I spend hours repairing fraying journals, scanning fragile photographs, and helping patrons trace family histories. In the evenings, I return home and prepare simple dinners, roasted vegetables and brown rice, and settle into my armchair with a book. Yet still, something tugs at the corners of my mind, an unspoken ache that whispers of unfinished stories. I think of him often, his laughter beneath the oak, his calloused hands folding paper with care. I imagine his life abroad, the cobblestone streets he wanders, the friends he has made. I wonder if he ever pulls that photograph from his wallet, presses it close, and remembers me. One evening, I settle at my desk with the shoebox of letters. I flip through each draft, notes of longing, regret, promises written in ink that's faded with tears. I read the words I never had the courage to send. I miss the way your laughter filled the air. I dream of the day our halves can be whole again. My chest tightens, and I realize that even in this new life, I've carried him with me, half of my own story always tethered to his. That night, I slip into my new routine, a hot bath with lavender oil, the soft glow of candlelight dancing on the water's surface. I rest the photo on the edge of the tub, and as the steam rises, it blurs the edges of the paper, mirroring the way memories can shift and soften over time. I close my eyes and let the warmth seep into my tired muscles, each breath a balm against loneliness. Sleep comes slowly, riding in on gentle waves of memory and longing. Even in dreams, I wander the stacks of the library, searching for him among the shelves. I run my fingers along spines, hoping to feel the imprint of his handwriting. But when I awaken, the photograph is still there, half smile glowing softly in the dim light. And so I rise again, tuck the photo into my pocket, and step into my new beginnings. Heart full of hope, yet still carrying that familiar ache of being only half of a whole. Part 5. Echoes in the halls. I arrive at the library before opening hours, the heavy oak doors creaking, a familiar greeting as I slip inside. The air is cool and silent, save for the soft hum of the climate control system that protects our archives, an ocean of whispered histories waiting to be rediscovered. I pull on my cotton gloves and push open the door to the back stacks, where light rarely penetrates and dust motes drift like golden snow in the narrow beams from high windows. Today, I've been tasked with sorting a newly donated collection of personal papers from a local historian, letters, journals, postcards, fragile testimonies of lives once lived. As I wheel out the rolling ladder to reach the highest shelf, I feel that familiar thrill of possibility. Any one of these envelopes might hold a secret that reshapes someone's understanding of the past. I set the boxes of papers on a long oak table and gently lift the lid on the first. Inside, sepia-toned letters tied with ribbon, brittle photographs, and a small leather-bound notebook rest together in faded harmony. I untie the ribbon, careful not to tear the brittle paper, and open the top letter, eyes skimming the elegant scrawl of a pen I don't recognize. Each page cracks softly as I unfold it, words of love and loss inked in a hand that seems at once familiar and foreign. I read of the writer's longing for a distant sweetheart, of stolen kisses beneath gaslight lamps, of promises whispered beside moonlit fountains. My breath catches its as though the past is breathing back through this paper, echoing the ache in my own chest for a love half held. I place that letter aside and continue, sorting by date, by envelope color, by the faint scent of lavender or tobacco that lingers in the crease. Hours pass in a blur of handwriting, until I come to a small white envelope tucked behind a stack of typed documents. The handwriting on its front is unmistakable, slanted and familiar, each loop and flourish echoing the letters I wrote but never sent. My heart hammers as I pick up the envelope, brushing my thumb over the name I know so well, his name. How did this end up here, in someone else's donation? I turn it over, searching for a postmark, a date, anything, but find nothing. No stamp, no return address, just his looping script that once felt like home. Hands trembling, I slide the letter from its envelope. My gloves still on, I marvel at the texture of the paper, slightly thicker than ordinary stationery, the kind he used for special occasions. I unfold it, and my breath catches at the sight of his words. My dearest, I carry your laughter in my pocket and your warmth in my heart. I wish I could turn back time to simply hold you again. Forgive the distance I've let grow between us. A tremor runs through me, and I lean forward, pressing the letter to the table to steady myself. The words are incomplete, only the first few lines, as if torn from a longer confession. My mind reels. Did he ever send this, or was it one of the drafts I thought lost forever? I close my eyes, the silence in the archive growing dense around me. I can almost hear his voice reading these lines to himself in a dimly lit flat halfway around the world, the same voice that once whispered promises beside our oak tree. Gingerly, I place the fragment back in its envelope and lift my gaze, scanning the room as though expecting him to step out from behind a shelf. The archive is empty, the only sound my own heartbeat and the whisper of pages turning in distant reading rooms. My fingers itch to hold my half of that torn photograph, to press its edge to the paper and feel the connection between us renewed. but the photo lies tucked safely beneath my blouse, close to my heart where it belongs. I gather the rest of the collection into neat stacks, my mind buzzing with questions. How did his letter drift into this donation? Is it a lost draft? I wrote no. I recognize his pronouns. He wrote this to me. Perhaps it was returned by mistake, or maybe someone uncovered it and sent it here, hoping a stranger might save it. I carry the fragmented letter and the rest of the papers back to my office, heart full of disquiet and wonder. Once inside, I spread out the materials on my desk, the morning sun warming the desk's mahogany surface through the blind slats. I placed the letter beside my own stack of unsent drafts, the two collections forming a dialogue across time and space. For a moment, I hesitate. Should I read more, or should I first secure permission from the historian who donated these papers? But my hand moves on its own, lifting the letter once more. As I read the lines again, the ache inside me deepens. This is his heart on paper, his longing laid bare. I glance at the photograph on my desk, half of our image, his arm around me, our smiles frozen in sepia glow. I lift the photo and place it gently atop the letter, aligning the torn edges in silent reverence. For a fleeting moment, the two pieces seem to click together again, and I feel his warmth ripple through the paper. My office phone buzzes, pulling me back to the present. I set the letter aside, careful not to crease it, and answer with a soft hello. My colleague on the other end needs guidance on cataloging, but my mind drifts back to that echo of his handwriting, an invitation or a plea, I cannot yet tell which. I gather myself and give clear instructions, but my gaze keeps returning to the letter. Finally, I apologize and ask to call back in 10 minutes. My excuse is a sudden headache, but in truth my heart pounds too loudly to focus. Back at my desk, I package the donation materials for scanning each envelope, each photograph, each note. I place the one addressed in his hand among them, separate from the rest, and slide it into a protective sleeve. My fingers brush the edge of the sleeve where his name rests, and I feel a pang of hope and fear entwined. What if this is a sign, a chance to reach across the years and restore what was torn? I close my eyes and breathe in the stillness, letting the promise of the past echo in my bones. Then, softly, I whisper, "Thank you," as though he can hear me through the veil of time and paper. I pack up my gloves and step out of the archive, the letter secured in my pocket alongside my photograph. The library's grand reading room stretches before me, sunlight dancing on rows of golden volumes. With each step, I feel the weight of possibility settle around me, an invitation to unearth not just his words, but perhaps a path back to each other. As I head toward the front doors at closing time, I press my hand to the letter and photograph tucked close to my heart. The torn edges may never fit perfectly, but tonight, in the hush of the archives, they be whispered of healing and hope, an echo that may yet become our story's next chapter. Part 6. Torn at the seam. I settle into my favorite armchair by the window late one rainy afternoon. The world outside blurred by droplets racing each other down the glass. My journal lies open on the coffee table, its leather cover soft and worn from years of secrets. I reach out, fingers grazing the edge, and remember the day I first found it in the attic of my childhood home. It was tucked behind a stack of old novels, yellowed pages and a faint scent of mothballs still clinging to its spine. I flipped through pages of sketches and half-written poems, then paused when something else slipped out onto the floor, the other half of our photograph. My breath caught. There it was, his half-smiling, warm, complete in a way my heart had not been for years. I knelt and picked it up, tracing the jagged line where it had been torn. I pressed my fingertip to the image, as though hoping to feel a spark of his warmth one more time. Tonight, I slide the photograph into the journal, between pages of my own late-night musings. I thumb through entries from the past few months, reflections on new routines, sketches of the oak tree at dawn, fragments of dreams where I find him waiting beneath its branches. Each page snapshots a moment of longing, and now, with his half-photo nestled among them, the book becomes a bridge between us. I open to a blank page near the back, the paper soft under my fingertips. For a moment, I hesitate, unsure whether to write or simply to hold the silence. Then I begin, words pouring out like gentle rain. Tonight, I found you again, tucked inside my own story. I pause, pen hovering. Remembering the thrill of holding your half-smile, the way it filled the emptiness I didn't know was there. My mind drifts back to that attic, dusty beams slanting through grimy windows, motes dancing in the light. I remember the thrill of discovery, the sudden rush of hope that maybe, somehow, you'd left this here for me to find. Or perhaps fate placed it in my path, reminding me that our edges, though torn, still belong together. I trace the seam in the photo against the journal page, aligning it with a doodle of our oak tree, its branches bridging the gap between two pages. The image is still incomplete, only half a portrait, half a promise, but there is something poetic in its imperfection, a mirror of my own heart. Closing my eyes, I imagine slipping into that attic again, but this time he is there, waiting beside the dusty novels. He reaches out, and we press our halves of the photograph together. For a heartbeat, they click perfectly, and the world feels whole. I set the pen down and place my palm over the journal, feeling the shallow dip where the photograph rests. In the hush of the room, I breathe in the scent of rain and old leather, letting the quiet wash over me. Lifting the photo, I flip back to its torn edge and press it to mine, feeling the teeth of paper meet. It trembles slightly in my hand, fragile, like the memories it carries, but it still holds warmth, a reminder that love endures even when it's been ripped apart. As the rain's rhythm on the roof softens, I close the journal and tuck it beneath my arm. I cradle the photograph close, edge to edge, and whisper into the dim light, "You are not lost to me." Tomorrow, I'll return to the archives with both halves secured in a protective sleeve, ready to piece together the fragments of our story. But for now, I let the seam remain torn, a testament to survival and the hope that one day, our edges will meet without fear of falling apart. Part 7. Rain-soft recollections. I sink into the armchair by the window as the first drops begin to fall, tapping a gentle rhythm against the glass. Each bead of rain traces its own path down the pane, weaving silver threads that blur the world beyond into a soft watercolor wash. The scent of wet earth drifts in through the cracked window, and I close my eyes, letting the lullaby of the storm carry me back to that night at the spring fair. It was raining then, to an unexpected May shower that turned the fairgrounds into a glistening wonderland of puddles and lantern light. We arrived hand in hand, laughter bubbling between us as we dodged beneath striped tents, the air rich with the scent of popcorn and damp grass. He led me to the bandstand at the heart of the carnival, where a small jazz trio played a slow, smoky tune that curled around our shoulders like silk. He held out his hand in that playful way of his, eyebrows raised in challenge, and I placed mine in his with a tremble of anticipation. We stepped beneath the soft glow of lanterns, our feet careful in the slick grass, and he drew me close, one arm at my waist, the other outstretched, guiding me through the steps of a dance we never learned but somehow knew by heart. The rain fell around us in a silver curtain, each drop a tiny kiss on our skin. I felt his breath warm against my ear as he whispered, "You look like a dream here," and I laughed, breathless with joy. My hair was damp, curls clinging softly to my neck, and the hem of my dress sipped cool water with every step. He spun me once, twice, until I was dizzy with the world's quiet wonder. The band's clarinet cried out a tender note, and I rested my head on his shoulder, closing my eyes against the thrill of it all. In that moment, I felt utterly alive, every sorrow and longing washed away by the rain's gentle insistence that we simply be together. Later, when the song ended, we lingered in the hush, listening to the storm's soft applause. He pressed his forehead to mine and murmured, "I wish tonight could last forever," and I whispered back, "Me too," though I knew even then how fragile such wishes could be. Tonight, as I watch the rain trace its own memories down my window, I can almost feel his arms around me once more. The lullaby of droplets on glass and rustling leaves becomes a bridge across time, carrying me back to that spinning world of lantern light and laughter. I rise and tiptoe to the bookshelf where I've placed the shoebox of letters and photos. My fingers hover over the lid, then lift it to reveal fragments of our past, the torn photograph, dampened slightly by condensation but still intact, the drafts of my unsent letters, their edges curled like petals, and the faded ticket stubs from that fair, pressed between journal pages. I retrieve the stubs, a carousel ride, cotton candy, and the bandstand, and hold them against my heart. Each one is a fragment of that rainy night, a reminder that love can dance even when the world is wet and wild. Slipping into my coat, I carry the box to the window seat, and there, I pore over the letters, finding one I wrote under a similar storm's hush. My love. The rain reminds me of you tonight, soft, persistent, and utterly beautiful. I trace the words with a fingertip, as though touching his voice itself. The storm outside crescendos, and the room fills with the patter of rain and the distant rumble of thunder. I lean back, closing my eyes, and imagine him swaying beside me under that bandstand, his cheek against my hair. In the hush between drops, I whisper to the night, "Do you remember?" and the rain seems to answer with a deeper, steadier drum, a promise that memory endures. I press the torn edge of my photograph to my lips, tasting ink and possibility, and vow to carry that rain-soft dance in my heart until the day our halves can find each other again. Outside, the storm sings us both to sleep, me in my quiet room, and perhaps him, somewhere under foreign skies, each of us cradling half a photograph, dreaming of the other. Part 8. Letters Unsent. I sit at my desk late into the night, the only light a lone desk lamp that casts a warm circle across the scattered pages before me. Each sheet bears my handwriting, lines of longing and regret penned in the small hours when sleep eluded me. I pick up the first envelope, its flap still unsealed, and lift the letter within. My dearest, I woke this morning clutching your half of our photograph, and I swear I could feel your pulse against mine. I trace the words with a fingertip, remembering the night I wrote them. The words flowed like whispered confessions, each sentence a trembling step toward admitting how deeply I missed him. But in the dawn's sober light, fear crept in, fear that sending these words would break me more than keeping them locked away. I tucked that draft into its envelope and set it aside, moving to the next sheet. The paper is stained where tears fell, ink smudged in places. I replayed our last dance in the rain today, the droplets our private applause. I wish I had held you tighter, told you then what I know now. My chest tightens as I read. Those sentences never reached his hands, yet in them I found solace. Pouring my heart onto the page gave me the illusion of holding him close once more. I flip through more letters. One begins with "If only I'd said goodbye properly," recounting the agony of watching him leave without promise of return. Another reads, "You deserve someone brave enough to cross oceans for your smile," lines that ended up folded in my journal instead of mailed in a stamped envelope. A final draft confesses I'm learning to piece myself together, but I carry your half wherever I go, words that echo the torn photograph tucked beneath my blouse. Each unsent letter feels like a heartbeat, stilled words born of vulnerability and hope, yet never offered. I gather them all into my hands, the stack trembling like a precious offering. I press them to my chest and close my eyes, drawing strength from the collective weight of my own courage. Letters I wrote for him, and ultimately for myself. I rise and move to the window, rain pattering softly outside. I open one envelope at random, allowing the draft to slip free. I cradle it in both hands, envisioning his gentle brown eyes reading each line. For a moment, I imagine sending these words across the seas, closing the distance with ink and paper. But the wind picks up, rattling the window pane, and I realize some confessions are meant only for nighttime and memory. I fold the letter and return it to the envelope, sealing it with a lingering kiss on the paper's surface. Walking back to my desk, I place the sealed letters into the shoebox alongside the torn photograph and the fragment of his handwriting from the archives. This box has become a repository of half-lives, drafts of what could have been, pictures of what once was, and fragments yearning to be whole again. I close the lid gently and slip it beneath my bed, where it will wait until the day I'm ready to release these words into the world, or until fate brings him back into my life. Tonight, I allow myself to drift, comforted by the knowledge that though the letters remain unsent, their truths live within me. And as sleep tugs at my eyelids, I press my hand over my heart, where the photograph rests, and whisper, "One day, you'll read these words, before surrendering to dreams woven from paper, ink, and undying hope. Part 9. The Local Cafe. I push open the heavy glass door of the cafe, our old haunt, on a misty morning, and the bell tinkling overhead feels like an invitation back in time. The scent of freshly ground coffee beans and warm pastries wraps around me like a familiar blanket. I pause by the counter, letting the aroma ground me, before I notice the barista, her smile bright behind the espresso machine's steam. It's not her fault the cafe feels different. New owners, a fresh neon sign over the door, and sleek seating replacing the creaky wooden chairs we once knew. But as she hands me my latte, precisely 2 shots of espresso, steamed milk just barely frothed, I see in her eyes the same warmth he had on our first date here. She traces the latte art's heart shape with a gentle nod, and I almost believe I'm back in that sunlit corner booth, laughing at his terrible pun about foam across the world. I carry my mug to a small table by the window, its surface etched with initials carved long ago, ours, side by side, now softened by time. I set the latte down and tuck the journal and shoebox onto my lap, the latter humming with possibilities. The rain outside taps a soft rhythm, echoing the comforting hush of early mornings we once shared over dark roasted blends and his soft recitations of poetry. I unwrap the photograph from my pocket, pressing its torn edge against his half-together hair, if only for a moment. The barista glances over with a curious tilt of her head, and I tuck the photo quickly away, cheeks warming at the reminder that my past can still surprise me. I inhale the steam from my latte and close my eyes, letting the memory of that first morning surface. He arrived late, apologetic, hair mussed by early spring wind, carrying 2 mugs of coffee from the very cafe we now sit in. He slid one across the table with a grin and said, "Thought you might need this before you drown in Dickens." I chuckled then, and he laughed, that deep, rich sound that made me forget how cold my hands were around the ceramic mug. We talked until closing time, losing track of hours like drifting leaves on a slow river. Lost in recollection, I begin to write in my journal, each word a tribute to those shared mornings. Here, where the rain meets the pain and coffee meets my lips, I feel him beside me. My pen hesitates, and I glance around. Other patrons flip through newspapers and tap quietly at laptops, unaware of the half-life I carry within this mug's warmth. I press my finger to the latte's heart, smudging milk into coffee, and think of his finger tracing the same shape as a silent promise. I sip slowly, letting the bitterness and cream swirl together just as our memories blend joy and sorrow. Each taste brings a deeper ache, but also a reminder that warmth can be recreated, even when the original has slipped away. Across the cafe, the barista pulls a shot of espresso, the machine hissing like old ghosts awakening. I study her hands, steady and assured, and imagine him teaching someone else the perfect pull on a portafilter, how he'd flick his wrist to level the grounds, the way his laughter would punctuate each small triumph. I glance at the photograph again, wondering if he ever returned here. Did he walk these same floors, taste these same roasts, and think of me? The thought carries a tender sting, like the last drop of foam on my tongue. I fold my journal and reach for the shoebox, lifting its lid to reveal my unsent letters and the fragments we've collected, our history laid out in crinkled paper. I pull out the letter I discovered in the archives, his handwriting across the page, an echo of his voice that surpasses any latte art heart. I press it flat on the table beside my photograph, aligning edge to edge, half smile meeting half confession. A drip of coffee splashes onto the letter S corner, and I catch it before it soaks the ink. I dab gently with a napkin, careful not to blur the words. I carry your laughter in my pocket. Even after all this time, the words still shimmer with longing. I fold the letter and tuck it back, finger lingering on the seam where paper yielded to paper. A sudden flash of movement catches my eye. A man strides in wearing a rain slicker and carries a sketchbook under his arm. My heart hammers, and I turn sharply, half expecting to see him, but it's just a stranger. I shake my head and breathe deeply, trying to steady the pulse of hope and disappointment that stirs in my chest. I set the shoebox aside and lean back, letting the rain's lullaby wash over me. The cafe's new playlist drifts through the speakers, soft acoustic guitar and distant saxophone melding into the storm outside. It feels like a song we once danced to, half remembered, waiting for the right moment to play again. I close my eyes, imagining him here ordering his usual black coffee, settling in at the corner table with his sketchbook open. I picture him drawing me, capturing the curve of my smile in charcoal strokes, unaware I'd find that portrait torn in 2 years later. When I open my eyes, the cafe is gentle and unhurried, strangers sharing quiet conversations, steam rising from mugs like little promises. I cradle my latte, the warmth seeping into my palms, and I realize that new memories can be layered atop old ones. The cafe may have new owners, new faces, but its heart, like mine, still knows how to hold hope. I finish my drink, each sip a small meditation on loss and renewal. I tuck my journal into my bag, along with the shoebox and my precious photograph. As I rise to leave, I pause at the counter and nod to the barista, offering a soft, "Thank you," with genuine warmth. Stepping back into the misty morning, I press the photograph close to my heart. The cafe's glow fades behind me, but its echoes remain: the warmth of shared laughter, the comfort of routine, and the lingering thrill of possibility. Even with our halves torn apart, I carry his warmth with me, one latte at a time. Part 10. Fragments of a Song. The rain had ceased, leaving behind a world washed anew, yet my heart remained steeped in memories. I wandered aimlessly, the city's rhythm guiding my steps, until a familiar melody drifted from a nearby radio, halting me in my tracks. It was our song, the one that played during our first dance, its notes weaving through the air like a gentle caress. I closed my eyes, letting the music envelop me, each chord stirring emotions I thought long buried. The lyrics spoke of love and loss, of moments cherished and time slipping away, mirroring the fragments of my own heart. I could almost feel his hand in mine, the warmth of his embrace, the whisper of his voice as he sang along. Tears welled up, unbidden, tracing silent paths down my cheeks as the song reached its crescendo, echoing the ache within me. As the final notes faded, I opened my eyes, the world around me unchanged, yet I felt a shift within, a rekindling of longing, a yearning for what once was. I continued walking, the melody lingering in my mind, a bittersweet reminder of love lost and the fragments that remain. Part 11. Midnight Letters. She writes to him in the dark, ink bleeding with emotion never to send, but to soothe her own restless mind. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the wet hush still clung to the windows, and the wind tapped softly against the glass like fingers seeking entry. I was curled up in the old armchair again, the one with the frayed edges and the scent of lavender hidden deep in its cushions. Everything felt quieter after midnight, softer somehow, as though the world had momentarily exhaled. I reached for the box beside me, worn leather, cracked at the corners, holding folded memories in trembling pages. Letters. All of them unsent. All of them to him. Some stained with tears, some written in a rush of moonlight and wine. Some simply fragments unfinished. Like we were. The ink in my pen still smelled faintly of iron and violets, and I dipped its nib into silence. I began with his name, the way I always did, as though invoking him would summon him from the shadows behind my thoughts. Dearest, I wrote, the word looking too intact on paper for something that felt broken in my chest. There was no structure, no plan. I wrote like breathing, the sentences falling out of me in waves. I told him about the rain, about the song I heard in the cafe that afternoon, the one that used to play when we slow danced in the kitchen with flour on our faces and tomato sauce on our sleeves. I told him I wore the old cardigan he left behind, the one that still carried the faintest trace of cedar and coffee. I wrote of small things, how the gardenias bloomed early this year, how the cat from next door curled up on my porch like she belonged to both of us. I wrote of larger things too, the kinds I couldn't say aloud, the kinds I was afraid would disappear if spoken. I miss you in ways I can't name, I wrote. Not just who you were, but who I was when you looked at me like I was home. I don't know how long I wrote for. Time bends strangely in the quiet. There were pauses, spaces where words refused to come, and I stared instead at the candlelight flickering against the walls. The silence spoke, sometimes louder than the ink. By the time I finished, the page trembled in my hands. I didn't read it over. I never did. The words weren't meant for revision, only for release. I folded it neatly, as if folding would somehow contain the ache, and slipped it into the box. Dozens lived there now, some long, some short, some beginning with anger and ending in tears. They were like echoes of a life I almost lived. Little paper ghosts lined up to remind me that love, even when lost, had once burned brightly enough to leave an afterglow. When I blew out the candle, the darkness didn't feel so hollow. I climbed into bed with the weight of ink in my veins, and dreams that smelled faintly of cedar, and regret, and lavender. I slept without reaching for the photograph tonight. The letters had done enough. Part 12. A chance glimpse. On a business trip, she spots him in a crowd, heart racing, breath caught, yet she doesn't approach. Cities blur together when you travel too often. Airports filled with half-heard announcements. Taxi drivers who speak in rhythms more than words. And hotel rooms that smell like fresh linen and someone else's yesterday. But that morning in Lisbon felt different. I had just stepped out of the conference hall. My name tag still clinging to my blazer. And the sunlight had poured onto the street like warm milk. People moved past me in soft murmurs. The kind of weekday rhythm that feels both urgent and completely still. And then there he was, standing across the avenue, under the awning of a bookshop painted the color of old terracotta. His back was half turned. But I knew that posture. That particular slouch of the shoulders that always made him seem like he was listening to music only he could hear. I didn't breathe. I couldn't. The world collapsed into that one pinpoint of recognition. And everything else, the chatter, the cars, the weight of my bag disappeared. It had been 3 years. Maybe a little more. But time hadn't dared touch him. His hair was longer now. A little messy. And he wore a navy coat that billowed slightly when the wind tugged at it. I should be crossed the street. Called his name. Run to him like the movies say we're supposed to. But my feet, they anchored to the cobblestone. My heart thudded painfully in my throat. And all I could think was, what if he turned and didn't he recognize me? What if he did? He leaned forward to look into the shop window. And a little girl darted around his legs, laughing as she clutched a melting gelato. She wasn't his. I knew that instantly. But for a flash of a second, I imagined she was, and the image of him with a child. Soft laughter in the sun hit me like a forgotten dream. My fingers trembled. I reached into my coat pocket and touched the folded edge of the photograph I always carried, my half creased and faded, beside with his smile. He turned then, just slightly. His eyes scanned the street absently, never quite landing on me. And I stepped back into the doorway of a florist, hidden by orchids and uncertainty. I don't know how long I stayed there, watching him shift his weight from foot to foot, adjust the strap of his bag, and eventually walk away. With every step he took, something inside me unraveled, and I let it. Because approaching him would be meant breaking the spell. It would be meant risking that whatever we had was no longer held tenderly in both our hearts but only in mine. That night, I wrote about him in my hotel room, on the hotel's stationery with a pen that scratched like memory. I didn't cry. I didn't ache the way I thought I might. I just felt full. Like I'd touched something beautiful again. Even if only from a distance. Like a melody that played for only a moment, then disappeared into the wind. Part 13. Shared silence. Their unspoken conversation in a crowded street, a nod, a smile, and the photograph half hidden in her sketchbook. The street was humming that afternoon, alive with the soft percussion of footsteps on stone and the occasional bell of a passing cyclist. I had taken to sketching in public lately. Not because I wanted to be seen, but because I wanted to disappear into the noise. My bench sat at the edge of the plaza, under a chestnut tree shedding its late spring blossoms. I had my sketchbook open, a pencil tucked behind my ear, and a coffee slowly cooling by my side. The drawing was half finished, just outlines of faceless people, shadows in motion. Then I felt it. That unmistakable shift in the air. Like the universe inhaled sharply. I looked up, and there he was again. Just across the plaza. As if the city had drawn him with the same pencil I now clutched. He didn't see me at first. He was talking to someone. Nodding politely, his hands tucked deep into the pockets of a charcoal coat. But then his gaze swept the plaza. Lazily. Casually, and landed on me. I didn't move. Neither did he. We just looked. A silent acknowledgement suspended between street musicians and barking dogs. I didn't know what expression was on my face. Only that my heartbeat had slowed in that strange, floating way, like it had remembered an old rhythm. He smiled. Just the smallest shift of his mouth. As if to say, I see you. As if to say, yes. It was real. And then I did something I hadn't planned. I reached down into the back pocket of my sketchbook and pulled out the photograph. My half, torn along the center like a wound that never quite closed. I let it rest there, half visible against the page, its edges curling slightly with time. I didn't hold it up, didn't wave it. I simply let it be. A whisper instead of a shout. His eyes flicked downward, and I could tell he saw it. Saw the soft proof that I had kept a part of us close all these years. That somewhere between the pages and the coffee rings and the pencil smudges, he had never really disappeared. We didn't speak. No dramatic reunion. No racing into arms. Just two people breathing the same air again. Letting silence do the talking. And then, just like that, he dipped his head in a soft nod, one I returned without thinking. A bow to the past. To what was, and perhaps to what will never be. He turned. Walked away. And I let him. Not because it didn't ache, but because sometimes the quietest moments are the ones that say the most. I looked back at my sketchbook. The photo lay there still. Still mine. Still torn. But somehow softer. Part 14. Unfinished story. The house was quieter than usual when I returned. As if even the walls were holding their breath. Rain clung softly to the windows. Not storming, just whispering tiny beads tracing paths down the glass like fingers remembering an old route. I dropped my bag by the door. Shoes damp from the pavement, and walked through the hallway without turning on the light. The photograph was still on the mantel. My half, edges jagged like breath in cold air, soft around the corners from too much handling. I touched it absently, fingers brushing over the paper, always stopping at that torn edge. the part where his face used to be. I sat by the window with a blanket and a cup of something warm. Chamomile, maybe, I didn't check. The rain made the world outside feel soft, as if everything could be rewritten. I used to believe that stories had endings, that love either bloomed or broke, that hearts healed or hardened. But now, I realize there's a third kind. The kind that just keeps going, in memories, in letters never sent, in photographs with missing halves. I found the journal again, the one where I used to scribble down our moments, our shared jokes, little things he said that made the day feel lighter. I hadn't opened it in years. The ink was still legible, though a few pages were smudged. My handwriting, once neat, had become a little messy toward the end. Like I was trying to outrun something I didn't want to say. One entry stood out: maybe we're meant to be apart, but not lost to each other. I read it over and over. Was that me trying to convince myself, or was it truth I didn't want to face? I wonder if he still has his half. If sometimes, in his quiet moments, he pulls it from wherever he keeps memories and lets it rest in his palm. I wonder if he's tried to piece it together with mine in his mind. Not to fix the picture, but to remember the moment it captured. Back then, we thought love was supposed to feel like certainty. Now I think maybe it feels more like a question you never stop asking, but find peace in asking anyway. A conversation that never really ends, even when the people do. I don't want to fix the photograph anymore. I want to carry my half and let the tear remind me not of something broken, but of something cherished. Something that mattered enough to miss. The story isn't over. Maybe it never really ends. It just changes shape, folds in on itself, becomes softer with time. And in that softness, I find something like peace. I look out at the rain again. Let it fall. Let it blur the outlines of what was. I'm still here. Still holding on. Not to the past, but to the love that shaped me. Part 15. The Photographer. It was a quiet morning, gray and sleepy, when I decided to search for the person behind the photograph, the one we had taken together, the one we tore in half. For years, I had assumed that image belonged to us alone, something intimate and untraceable. But a recent memory stirred something in me. His half of the photograph had clearly been taken from the same frame. The same day, the same golden hour light bathing our faces. Someone had been there with us, behind the lens. And I remembered her. Mara. She was a friend of his. A friend of mine too, in a distant, quiet way. A photographer who wandered like light itself. Soft, unobtrusive, capturing beauty in moments that most people missed. I remembered her camera hanging around her neck like a pendant. The click of her shutter a kind of heartbeat to the days we spent back then. It took a few emails, a few polite rejections from galleries she no longer worked with, but eventually, a response came. "Come by the studio," she wrote. "I've got boxes full of ghosts." Her studio was in a small town by the sea. One of those places that smelled like tide and turpentine, where gulls wheeled in lazy spirals above aging rooftops. I took the train there, sat by the window with my headphones in, watching the blur of trees and coastline pass in a dreamy rhythm. Mara hadn't changed much. Her hair had grayed at the temples, her frame a little smaller, but her eyes were still sharp. Eyes that saw through layers. "It's been a long time," she said, placing a cup of tea before me, the steam curling like breath from a dream. I held out the half photograph. She took it carefully, eyes scanning the edges, the tear, the shadows. "You remember this?" I asked. She nodded slowly. "That day in the orchard. You two had been dancing. Light everywhere. Laughing. The kind of moment you try not to interfere with. I just captured it." I leaned forward. "Why was it torn in two, do you know?" She sighed, reached beneath the counter and pulled out an old portfolio. Leather-bound and faded, flipping carefully through the pages. She stopped when she reached the original print. Whole. Still intact. I stared. Our faces side by side. Sunlight softening the corners of our eyes. He looked at me like I was the only thing that existed. And I looked just as foolish in love. "I made a copy for both of you," she said gently. "The original stayed with me. But he asked for a second print a few weeks later. Just of his half. He didn't explain. I never asked." The silence wrapped around us like a scarf. I traced the edge of the image with a finger. "I tore mine the day he left," I whispered. It felt like keeping the whole thing was too much. Like a lie. Mara offered a small smile. "But you kept the half. That says something." I took a copy of the full photo home with me. She insisted. And though I kept it folded inside a journal, not quite ready to place it beside the torn half, something shifted that day. It wasn't just a photograph. It was proof that we had existed together, even if the frame didn't hold us forever. Part 16. A quiet reunion. It started with a letter. Not in his handwriting, but typed neatly, like he wanted to keep distance between the words and the feeling. "Let us meet," it said. "Same place. Same hour. If you're still holding on." I sat with that letter for a whole afternoon. My fingers traced the edge, as if it could tell me what to do. I wasn't sure if I was angry or grateful, or both in equal measure. I folded it carefully, placed it next to the torn photo, and let the silence make the choice for me. The park hadn't changed. Same old iron benches, the scent of dusk clinging to the leaves, and the sound of the fountain we once sat beside, whispering like it knew all our secrets. I arrived before the sun had completely dipped, light still lingering like a held breath. My heart pounded, quiet but relentless. And then, there he was. He stood at the edge of the path, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the twilight as if trying to recognize the shape of the past in the falling dark. When his eyes met mine, something softened in his shoulders. Not a smile exactly, more like a sigh shaped into a look. We didn't rush. Just sat side by side, the way we used to. I could feel the memory of us in the air between our shoulders. He pulled something from his coat pocket. Folded and faded. His half of the photo. I did the same. The edges didn't align perfectly. Life had bent and wrinkled them differently. But when we placed them side by side, close enough to touch but not quite touching, it felt like maybe the story wasn't broken after all. I kept it all this time, he said, voice barely more than a breath. Didn't he know why? Maybe because it still felt like part of me. I nodded. Me too. Though some days I wanted to burn it. He laughed. The sound warm and weathered. Same. But I couldn't. Could you? I shook my head. No. Because it wasn't just about us. It was about what we believed in back then. What we thought love was. A breeze moved through the leaves, carrying the scent of jasmine and dusk. For a while we said nothing. Just sat with our pieces, letting them rest near each other. Like a reunion of sorts. Not dramatic. Not even conclusive, but quiet and necessary. I never stopped hoping you'd remember, I said softly. He turned his face to mine. I never forgot. I just thought maybe you wanted to. The street lights flickered on, casting gold across our joined memories. He reached for my hand. Slowly, gently. I let him. And there, in the quiet park where we first kissed, beneath the same whispering trees and the worn rhythm of the fountain, we sat as two halves, remembering how once we had made each other whole. Part 17. Healing Edges. We didn't glue the photo back together. We just held our halves close, edges frayed like the years we spent apart. Neither of us asked why we kept them so long. Some things are too sacred for explanation. I used to trace the torn edge with my thumb, he said. His eyes on the photograph. As if I could smooth out what happened. I nodded. The ache in my chest a quiet agreement. Me too. I thought if I held it long enough, maybe it would stop feeling like a wound. He looked at me. Eyes softer than they'd ever been. Do you think people can really heal? I wanted to answer quickly. But I didn't. I let the question sit between us, like the space we had once filled with silence, grief, and memories we never fully unwrapped. I think healing looks like this, I said. Two people showing up with their broken halves. He smiled. Not wide, but deep. Not perfect, but here. I leaned back against the bench, feeling the slats press gently into my spine. The night was cool now. The air full of unsaid things. There were days I hated you, I admitted. My voice barely above a whisper. I know, he said. I hated me too. My throat tightened, tears threatening. not out of pain, but out of release. And days I missed you so much. It hurt to breathe. He didn't flinch. I kept expecting to forget the sound of your laugh, but it always echoed in quiet rooms. We sat in that ache, like people who knew grief by its first name. But there was something else there too. Forgiveness. Maybe. Or the beginning of it. I don't want to go back, I said slowly. His brows drew in. Unsure. I mean, I don't want to rewrite us. I want to write from here. He exhaled. A sound that carried weight. I wouldn't change it either. Even the pain. It shaped me. So I know how to sit with you now. A moth fluttered past, drawn to the street lamp above us. We watched it for a while, two quiet people relearning light. He turned toward me, the photograph still resting between us. So what now? I smiled. Tired but true. Maybe we start with coffee, and morning walks, and seeing where the days take us. He nodded. No promises. Just honesty. Just presence, I added. That's all I've wanted. And as the night deepened, the photo lay between us like a stitched scar, not ugly, not forgotten, but proof that we had loved, lost, and now maybe found something softer. Not a second chance. A new one. Part 18. Whole again. Under the soft lamplight, I watched the last seam press into place. Not just paper and glue, but years folded and smoothed. Parts stitched back together without words. We sat across from each other, knees nearly touching, the photograph resting between us like a fragile bridge. It had taken us this long to make it here to this quiet hour. This tiny room, this dim pool of amber light that made everything softer than it should be. His hand reached for the edge of the photo, and mine followed. Our fingers brushed hesitant at first, then still. Warm. That's all it was. No promises. No questions. Just a soft, human kind of warmth that traveled slowly from his skin into mine. Like it had been waiting years to find its way back. I never thought we'd fix it, he said. His voice dipped low, like it didn't want to startle the moment. Maybe we didn't fix it, I whispered. Maybe we just learned how to hold the broken parts differently. He smiled. Not with his lips, but with his eyes. Tired. Honest. Grateful. Like someone who had wandered too long and finally remembered the way home. Outside, rain began to tap gently against the window. A rhythm softer than silence. He leaned back slightly, eyes half-lidded. The kind of look that only comes when you've run out of things to prove. I turned the photo over. On the back, in faded pencil, was a single date. The day we first took it. A moment that had survived storms, years, and all the things we didn't say. Do you ever wonder what would be happened if we hadn't? I started, but he stopped me gently. I used to, he said. But now I think maybe we had to break apart, so we could choose each other again. This time with our eyes open. I nodded, the lump in my throat warm and heavy. I never stopped feeling you, I said. Even when I tried to forget. He took a breath, and it came out like a release. Then he reached for my hand again. This time, I didn't hesitate. Our palms met, quiet and sure. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't a grand ending. It was a lullaby. A long exhale. The kind of touch you don't have to think about. Sleep was creeping into my shoulders now. A sweet weight. Safe. Like I could finally stop holding everything up. I'm tired, I murmured, closing my eyes. So rest, he said. His thumb brushing the back of my hand. I'll be right here. And he was. Even when I drifted. Even when the photo fluttered gently to the floor. Whole again. Not perfect. Not untouched. But whole. Just like that. That's my story. Good night.